Hello, welcome back to VGC. You're watching our review of Cyberpunk 2077 on PC. This review was initially written by Andy Robinson and transcribed for video purposes by me, Steven McInerney.
Come on, V. Let's get you home.
Game developers' obsession with building bigger, more detailed worlds has led to many recent releases feeling a bit like they rolled off a factory production line. The pressure to hit that arbitrary 50-hour content mark while keeping production costs under control has increasingly seen open-world games in particular dilute their best content with hours of filler with systems designed specifically to maximize content rather than deliver the most unique experience. With Cyberpunk 2077, developer CD Projekt shows it is possible to create a massive sandbox adventure that's just as impressive and tailored as the very best linear action games. As a narrative experience, 2077 is undoubtedly one of the most immersive and engrossing video games to date, besting titles with far less complexity and certainly fewer script pages. Throughout Cyberpunk's 50-hour plus package, it's impressive how little filler there is. Even 2077's side content is arguably as strong as its main story, with each mission offering a memorable detour through the game's fascinating futuristic cityscape. Cyberpunk's spectacular campaign missions, played entirely in first-person view, offer an engrossing ride through a sci-fi story with compelling themes and likeable characters, which by themselves could contend for Game of the Year title. But on the backdrop of Night City's stylish and captivating sandbox, they make up a hugely impressive package that feels like a genuine achievement for the open-world RPG genre. However, this level of complexity naturally comes at a cost, especially at a time when the game has had to be shipped via remote working. At release, Cyberpunk 2077 has a significant number of bugs. During our playthrough, we regularly encountered floating scenery, stuck UI elements, teleporting characters and audio glitches, and it was even worse before the day one patch arrived. The issues aren't game-breaking and certainly didn't spoil our overall experience, but there's little doubt that it would have been a more polished game if CD Projekt had delayed it for further testing. If you've already amassed a pile of games to play over Christmas, it might be worth considering saving your trip to Night City until further patches arrive. That said, if you can ignore a few glitches, this is still a tremendous experience. When players first start the game, they're tasked with creating a character, always named V, and then setting initial character stats, before choosing between one of three life paths: Nomad, Street Kid, or Corporate. The backstory you choose will determine your prologue mission and the dialogue options you'll have thereafter. But whether you decide to start in the city centre or the desert badlands, your journey will eventually lead you to fellow merc-for-hire Jackie, who becomes a key ally and introduces the player to the criminal underworld of Night City and its many fixers. From here, a deeper narrative unravels, involving corporate conspiracies and moral turmoil, delivered across spectacular set pieces, stunning environments, and some impressive performances from 2077's cast of augmented characters.
You ever feel like the city doesn't give you a choice? You either burn alive in it, or you never existed at all.
From the very start of the game, players are free to explore Night City, the futuristic megalopolis obsessed with body modification, with frequent phone calls and text messages, though sometimes too many, providing a constant supply of narrative missions. The city is totally convincing as a futuristic metropolis, with bustling city streets on PC at least, with not yet tested consoles, television broadcasts, and desperate districts creating the illusion of a real functioning place.
Dex had a load to say about you. I hope he wasn't overselling.
The game's prologue lasts several hours before the world properly opens up, and the digital ghost of Keanu Reeves' Johnny Silverhand firmly plants itself inside the player's head. Before and after, 2077's quest feels surprisingly warm-hearted, almost like an interactive buddy film, with the performance of its characters genuinely elevating the enjoyment of each mission. Usually, RPGs of this complexity are forgiven for their flat character performances and lackluster animation, but Cyberpunk's casts are as convincing as we've seen, when release day bugs aren't making their cigarettes float through the air, at very least. Compared to Fallout or Deus Ex Human Revolution, Cyberpunk's conversation feel far more engrossing and alive than the genre rivals, with characters navigating and interacting interacting with the scenery as if the player had walked straight into a movie set.
Do whatever it takes to stop him, defeat him, gut him. If I gotta kill, I'll kill.
There's genuine tension, emotion, and, well, life in 2077's dialogue scenes, which makes interacting with NPCs genuinely enjoyable and rarely a chore. There's little doubt that 2077 is a better story-driven RPG than it is an action game. In fact, it may be the first AAA blockbuster that genuinely doesn't need gunfights to pad out its story sequences. Players can go hours without lifting a weapon, and its best sequences don't involve them at all. Sneaking into corporate headquarters using nothing but your wit, or taking one of Silverhand's ex-girlfriends on a date to Night City's derelict drive-through cinema are real highlights, and thankfully, the game is full of these sort of encounters. And when the guns and katanas do come out, combat encounters are slow and methodical, often requiring stealth and computer hacking to progress successfully. Here, combat falls squarely in shoot numbers out of a man until he drops a loot box territory, and while enjoyable, doesn't feel quite as integral to the experience as in games like Deus Ex or Fallout. CD Projekt has implemented a fluid class system, which essentially lets players assign class points to any of the 5 core stats. This results in a custom build tailored to your playstyle, such as a stealthy melee character or bruiser with hacking skills. Laid on top of this are a myriad of crafting and upgrade systems with enough depth to please those keen enough to dig into their armor stats, as well as a whole roster of body augmentations players can purchase and have surgically attached to their limbs, such as a double jump or arm blades. However, these elements can ultimately be ignored by those who wish to focus on progressing the story, and combat scenarios shouldn't provide too much of a blocker outside of a handful of tricky boss encounters. The narrative experience is very much the star of 2077, and it's pleasing how it's presented in a way that can be digested by those who might not typically have the time or patience for a huge open world game. 2077 goes out of its way to cater to players with little time. One of 2077's best features is the skip button, which allows players to fast forward through dialogue or passenger journeys if they want to get straight to the meat. The main campaign itself is shorter than its peers at less than 20 hours, but that's because at least the same amount of content has been moved to optional side quests. As was the case with The Witcher 3, Cyberpunk's optional missions are a real highlight, offering a pleasing amount of variety and some standout narrative experiences that could easily have slotted into the main story. Players can choose to explore some of Johnny Silverhand's past, continue the stories laid out by other supporting characters, or dig deeper into braindancing and other lore from the original tabletop game. It's here where Cyberpunk 2077 again feels like a genuine class above its genre rivals, with some of the most memorable and unique stories we've seen in this type of game. You get a sense that CD Projekt Red's writing and design team were given real autonomy to create this content, and it shows in the quality of the final product. Overall, Cyberpunk feels like an unmissable experience for fans of story-focused games, both big and small. But again, it's tough for us to urge you to jump in at launch without that pretty big caveat that there are quite a few bugs on day one. It's also worth noting that we reviewed the game on a high-end PC. Console code was not available to us to compare, and owners of older Xbox One and PS4 models might want to wait for player footage to be published before purchasing. However, if you can swallow a few glitches in the system, Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the most memorable games you'll play this year. Guys, thanks for watching our review of Cyberpunk 2077. Do let us know down in the comments if you're excited for CD Projekt's latest game. For now though, make sure to hit subscribe on this channel so you don't miss out on any future videos, and check out some of the other reviews on screen.